If this is your first time or you're a return listener and you're listening to the Spin on Peace podcast and you're wondering what's the purpose of this podcast, I want to read off a couple of names for you all. The first name is Alice Ball. Alice Ball. The first name is Alice Ball. The second name is Benjamin Banneker. The third name is Uncle Nearest. And the fourth is not a name, or it is a name, not a name of a person. The original Dixieland Jazz Band. And you all may say, well, what the hell? How does that answer the question of the purpose of this podcast? Let me get to it. The first name that I want to read off or explain is the original Dixieland Jazz Band. So the original Dixieland Jazz Band is credited for the first jazz record ever because it was they released the first commercially trafficked, distributed jazz record. The Dixieland Jazz Band, original Dixieland Jazz Band, is a band full of white people. You all may say, well, I've heard jazz. Jazz don't seem like something that can be created by white people. And you are correct. White people did not create it. However, as you can guess, in 1917, black people didn't have that many resources. So you can't release a commercial jazz record. Even if you had the money to record it, what radio stations are going to play a record from a jazz band, from a black jazz band? So while the original Dixieland Jazz Band is widely credited for the first ever jazz record, they are not the first recording of jazz or the invention of jazz. And so that history can kind of get skewed. The actual origin of jazz, and I'm mad that I don't remember it because I took an intro to jazz during my undergrad many moons ago. I forget who the actual first recording of jazz is, but it's so skewed because there are so many implementations of and mixes between jazz and blues. However, I can assure you that a white band was not the first people to record or invent jazz. What's the next name I'm going to go with? Benjamin Banneker. Benjamin Banneker was a black architect in Washington, D.C., hired by the first president ever, George Washington. Shout out to my birthday twin. Benjamin Banneker was more than an architect because he was just a genius. He was a man of just many skills and trades. However, he was hired by George Washington, commissioned by George Washington to design the layout for Washington, D.C. He was working on a team with another, I don't know if he was an architect, but his name was Pierre Lafont, I believe. Benjamin Banneker designed the layout for Washington, D.C. and was working with this man, Pierre. And in the midst of creating these plans and mapping out the plans for Washington, D.C., Pierre quit the team. And with him quitting the team, he takes the plans that Benjamin Banneker has been working on along with him, and he just gets away from it. And so, in the result of that, Benjamin Banneker, this black architect, luckily had remembered literally everything that he had did to create the layout for Washington, D.C. as we know it today, and just recreated the plan. However, if you ask someone, if you Google it, if you look in historical texts, they will accredit Pierre for creating or designing, quote unquote, Washington, D.C., because this is a white face, opposed to giving credit to this black man, this black genius. Who was the other person that I was named? Alice Ball. Alice Ball was responsible for successfully creating a leprosy treatment while she was studying at the University of Hawaii. However, she unfortunately passed at a young age. I believe she was 23 or 24 years old, a black woman. And in her passing, the president of United States, the president of the University of Hawaii took her research and published it and is widely credited for a while, because they ended up correcting it, was widely credited for finding this treatment for leprosy, and was credited for finding this treatment of leprosy, rather than this black woman who actually found and didn't have time to publish it because of her untimely death. The next name, Uncle Nearest. You all know Jack Daniels. You may go out and drink. You may ask for a Jack and Coke. You may just be chilling at home and you want some whiskey. You may get some Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels is the name of the man who owned the distillery that published this concoction. However, the person that taught Jack Daniels how to distill whiskey was a black man named Uncle Nearest. I believe his real name was Nathan Green, but he's affectionately known as Uncle Nearest. Now, this is not like the past 3 cases of where something was stolen and then published and given credit to a white person. However, Uncle Nearest's contribution to teaching Jack Daniels how to distill whiskey is often missed. It's not often told. Although this black man taught this man who owns a distillery how to do it, he should not be overlooked. So I gave you four examples. The reason why I give you those 4 examples is because in America, for the past 400 years, its history has been rewritten to give credit to white people for things that they have no business being credited for.